Imagine being buried alive for 7 days. No food, no water, no light, no voice to call for help. Imagine hearing nothing but your heartbeat slowing, your breath fading, and the crushing silence of death approaching. Now imagine that in that moment, when your body begins to give up, your tongue begins to move, not with screams, but with a dua whispered by a prophet swallowed by a whale. La ilaha illa anta, subhanaka, inni, kuntu minaz zalimin. This is the unbelievable, true story of a man who survived beneath the rubble of a massive earthquake, not through strength, not through luck, but through the remembrance of Allah. What happened in those 7 days will shock you, move you, and make you fall in love with the power of dua all over again. Buried alive for 7 days, the dua that saved him from death. In a city that once woke up to the sound of children running, shopkeepers calling, and birds rising with the morning sun. Everything changed in a single minute when the earth roared like a wounded beast and folded the entire town into dust. And among the millions of screams that rose into the trembling sky, one belonged to a simple, ordinary man named Imran. A man who never thought his life would become a miracle written in the unseen pages of destiny. Because on that day, he walked out of his small home with a cup of tea in hand, thinking about work, thinking about bills, thinking about his mother's medicine, thinking about life. And then the road beneath him shook so violently that he dropped everything, falling to the ground as buildings swayed like boats in a storm. And before he could stand, the entire world collapsed on him in a deafening thunder that buried him under a mountain of shattered concrete, twisted metal, broken dreams, and suffocating darkness. And the last thing he saw before total blackness was a shard of the sky ripping above him like a blue paper torn apart. And then silence swallowed him whole. And when he opened his eyes again, he didn't know if he was alive or dead, because there was no light, no space, barely any air, only the crush of rubble pinning his legs, dust burning his lungs, and a strange ringing in his ears like a broken clock ticking inside his skull. And as he tried to move, he felt a sharp pain tear through his leg that made him cry out. But no one answered, no echo, nothing. And for a moment, he felt his heart sink with the crushing realization that he was alone under the ruins of a world that no longer existed. And with every passing second, the dust grew heavier around him, the darkness thicker, and the fear deeper. And yet in that terrifying moment of helplessness, he remembered a verse he had learned long ago, a dua whispered by Prophet Yunus, in the belly of the whale, a dua that carries the weight of forgiveness and the power of rescue. And with trembling lips he whispered, La ilaha illa anta, subhanaka, inni, kuntu minaz zalimin. And as his voice broke in the dark, he repeated it again and again until the words became the only light he could hold on to in the suffocating blackness. And the hours passed like years as thirst clawed at his throat and hunger twisted inside his stomach. But every time his heart began to panic, he forced himself to recite the dua, feeling as though invisible arms were holding his soul together. And he didn't know how much time had passed, whether it was day or night, because buried under tons of broken earth time became meaningless. And on the second day, he felt the air growing thinner, and his breaths came like small knives cutting into his chest, and the cold began to creep through his bones, and he felt his consciousness slipping. But even in weakness, his tongue continued the dua, La ilaha illa anta, subhanaka, inni, kuntu minaz zalimin. And then a strange thing happened, something he couldn't explain even later, because when he recited it, he felt a coolness pass over his heart like a gentle breeze inside a place where no wind could enter, and that coolness gave him the strength to stay awake a little longer. And on the third day, hallucinations started. He saw water dripping beside him. He imagined someone calling his name. He felt as if warm sunlight was touching his skin, although there was no sun. And yet through every hallucination, every painful breath, every cry of despair, the dua remained his anchor, his lifeline, his hope, as if the very stones around him were listening. And by the fourth day, his body had begun shutting down from hunger and dehydration. His lips cracked, his throat dry like desert sand, and he could no longer move his fingers, but his heart, oh, his heart was alive with remembrance. beating only through the mercy of Allah as he whispered the words that saved prophets in the darkest moments of history. And on the fifth day, when the rescuers finally reached the ruins of his neighborhood, they assumed no one could still be alive, because the area around him was flattened like crushed cardboard. But one rescuer suddenly froze when he heard a faint sound, not a shout, not a cry, but a soft, rhythmic whisper like a heartbeat carved into the dust. And he pressed his ear to the rubble and heard it again, La ilaha illa anta. And his eyes widened as he screamed for the others, and they dug like madmen, their hands bleeding, their tools striking against rocks, and hope burning inside their chests, because they knew whoever was down there was still holding on a life with a thread woven from faith, and it took them 6 hours to reach him. And when they finally removed the last heavy stone, a sliver of light fell onto Imran's dust-covered face, his eyes half open, his lips still moving with the same words he had repeated. For a week without food, without water, without any certainty of survival, only Allah, only the remembrance. And the rescuers cried when they saw him alive, because he looked like a man pulled from death itself. And as they carried him out, he felt fresh air against his face for the first time in 7 days. And he cried, not from fear, not from pain, but from gratitude, because he had tasted the closeness of Allah in a way he never had before. In the hospital, the doctors called his survival impossible, a miracle, a story that defied medicine and logic. And when he recovered enough to speak, he told them, I survived because Allah hears even the whispers buried under mountains. And his story spread across the world, shared in masjids, in homes, in hearts, reminding people that even when the earth folds, even when life collapses, even when death comes so close you can feel its breath, the duaofyunus remains a rope thrown from heaven into the deepest darkness, and whoever holds onto it will never drown, never fall, never be lost. And months later, when he returned to the place where he nearly died, he stood on the rubble that once buried him and raised his hands to the sky, whispering the same dua with tears streaming down, La ilaha illa anta, subhanaka, inni, kuntu minaz, zalimin. Because he knew now with absolute certainty that Allah saves in ways no human eye can see. And his story became a reminder that miracles still happen, that faith still protects, and that no, darkness is stronger than the light of a believer's heart. If this story touched your heart, then don't just scroll away. Share it, spread it, and let its message reach someone who needs hope today. Subscribe to Deeninminute for more emotional, powerful, faith-lifting Islamic stories that will remind you of Allah's mercy in every moment of your life. Comment, Allah is enough for me, if you believe miracles still happen, and hit the like button so this story reaches thousands of hearts. Your one click can be someone's reminder, someone's guidance, someone's turning point. Join the family of believers who keep the light of Iman alive.